Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art and Talk. Thank you for being with us today. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Art and Talk, and we're so excited to bring you a new art genre today in the field of dance. Our guest is the principal for the belly dance school, the Inspire Bellydance in Sydney, Australia, and it's one of the largest Oriental dance schools there. So we'll be diving into the art and culture of this dance, and we'll be finding all about her journey. We'll be looking also at a performance video of her, and she'll also be doing a demo as well. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'd like to welcome our guest for today, Rachel Bond. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, it's lovely to meet you.
Oh, we're so glad that you're here. And this is a new genre for us. You're the first one to come on to Art and Talk to present dance. And so we're so excited to find out about, now, can we call it belly dance or we call it Oriental? What is the correct terminology, and maybe clearing up a few misconceptions, if you would?
Sure. Well, actually, that's a bit of a sticky question. So I have called my school Inspire Bellydance because that is the name by which most people know this dance form in Australia and probably in the States and in many parts of the world, or sometimes a direct translation of belly dance. But it's actually kind of a misnomer because that term suggests that we only dance with one part of our bodies, which is ridiculous. While this dance is torso centered, it extends all the way out to the fingertips, to the toes, to the ends of the hair, even. So it is a whole body dance. The tricky thing is there isn't one right word for it, but one commonly used term within the community is Oriental dance, Oriental meaning of the East. Of course, in this instance, we're talking about the Middle East when viewed from a Western European perspective. So there is a colonialist sort of framework going on there, which is a little unavoidable. Some people also use the acronym, which is a bit awkward, but MENAHT, which is Middle Eastern, North African, Hellenic, and Turkic, which does kind of define the geographical parts of the world where this dance is done.
Mhm. So then the
Oh,
music,
let's say Oriental dance.
okay, all right, so we'll refer to it as Oriental dance. And so the differences would cross between the movements and the music depending on the geographical areas. Is that correct?
That's right. So across many of these areas, we do see the dance form that people know as belly dance, but there are also big regional differences in the folklore, in the culture, and of course that means that there's variations in the music and in the dance that goes with it. But there's a common thread.
Right, yes. Um, Tell us, how did you get started in this whole type of dance? What attracted you to it? Are you well versed in other dance forms as well?
Actually, no, I was never somebody who went to a lot of dance classes in my childhood or growing up. And I happened upon this by chance. I don't think I had ever even seen an Oriental dancer perform. I don't think I even knew really what it was when I went to my first classes. It's just that opportunity presented itself unexpectedly, and I was like, ah, sure, I'll give this a try. And that was actually at a week long creative camp, and I just loved it. So I went back the next year and did some more, and then ultimately was able to find some local classes where I lived and picked it up little bit by little bit. And my story is actually a very common one amongst dancers because very few of us start out thinking, this is what I want to be, this is what I want to do with my life. Instead, it creeps up gradually while we're busy doing other things. And that was definitely what happened to me. So I learnt throughout my university studies, which I was studying at university for 10 years. I've got two undergraduate and a postgraduate degree. So I was there a long time. And through that whole time, I was taking dance lessons and like little bit by little bit, I went from being the shy person in the back of the class to the shy person in the back of the performance group to the less shy person moving towards the front of the performance group to doing solo performances. So it was a very slow and gradual journey for me.
Mhm. Wow, that's really an interesting journey. It was a very incremental for you. And as you were saying it, you were kind of involved in all these other things, whether it was your school, things going on in life, and you were just presented initially this type of dance, as you were saying, in a creative camp. You kind of took to it, and then you just kept kind of sticking with it and getting better and better. And as you were saying, it kind of brought you out of your shell.
It really did. Of course, that time period corresponded to a time in my life when lots of other changes were going on as well. So I can't entirely attribute my confidence and willingness to talk to people and to get up in front of a crowd to dance, but I definitely think dance has something to do with it. Because if you saw me as a teenager, I certainly wouldn't be talking to you like this now.
And at what point did you start to perform? Just roughly about how many years had gone by? And did that just fall also naturally, or did you have a teacher that encouraged you, or another co-dancer that said, "Hey, look, you're ready to kind of get out there and perform"?
I did have a teacher who encouraged me. So I studied with many teachers over this time, but the teacher I credit with getting me started in performance is a woman called Despina, who still teaches a little bit around Sydney. And she was a performer in, I mean, at community events, at cultural events, and at sort of weddings and restaurants and parties. And she had a few of us students under her wing that she sort of trained to be able to perform in that way. And of course, it was a very gradual process. Of course, it started with being in a group and then performing at charity events or free events and building up the experience that way before being ready to call myself a professional dancer. And to be honest, if I think back on what those early performances would have been, I cringe a little bit, and I'm kind of grateful that we didn't have social media at that time and that people didn't have a recording device in their pockets, because I have learnt so much since that time and changed so much in my approach and my dancing. But it was a wonderful start, and she was super encouraging, and I'm forever grateful to her for that, even though I subsequently moved on to many other teachers.
Mhm. Yeah, it really sounds, Rachel, that just everything is just very beautifully and almost kind of neatly unfolded for you.
I'm just making it sound that way. I promise it wasn't actually like that.
I know you're so talented. I watched some of your videos, and you're just amazing. Before we get into that, and show everyone one of your performances, what does this belly dance, Oriental dance, what does it bring to you?
Well, I think it brings somewhat different things in different contexts. So it gives me something different when I'm dancing for myself, um, than when I'm teaching. For instance, when I'm teaching, the joy of it is in helping others to find the joy for themselves and to discover the ways that they can move their body and the beauty of that. And also, for people who are not from that culture to discover that culture and maybe, learn something really new or break some stereotypes. When I'm performing, actually, to some extent, it's the same thing, because even when I'm performing, I can't help but be a little bit of an educator. I often feel that I'm showing people something they maybe haven't seen before and maybe aren't expecting. But it's about connection. This is a dance that traditionally breaks the fourth wall. So, unlike, I don't know, something like a ballet or whatever, where there is a distinct kind of a very clear boundary between the performer and the audience. That's not generally the case in Middle Eastern dance or Oriental dance, because it's really about connecting between the audience and the performer. And that's a part of Middle Eastern music as well. So if you're listening to Middle Eastern music from with a live band, it's the audience doesn't just sit quietly like you do when you're at the opera. They interact, they call out, and they, you know, they sigh or they moan or they, they rejoice in what they're hearing, because it's designed to make you, to move you emotionally. And the dance shares that characteristic. So it's really normal for there to be an interaction between audience and performers. And that doesn't mean the audience is necessarily getting up and joining in, although that happens sometimes. But they might just be sitting in their chair doing this. They might be singing along to the music if they're from the culture. And so it's really about having that shared connection for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that shared connection. And there's almost like that no boundaries of like, well, the audience, as you're saying, like they can move, they can speak, they're really kind of getting into it, as well as you as the performer.
Yeah, and the more they get into it, the better I perform.
Because you're kind of getting off on that energy as well. It's kind of like that ebb and flow.
Absolutely, it's a conversation.
Yeah, beautifully said. Well, can you set up this video that we have? Tell us about I know there's some conventional aspects and some unconventional aspects. So tell us a little bit about this before we take a look at it.
Sure. Well, oddly enough, given what I've just talked about my preferred performance context and the interaction, this was a piece that I performed for an online show during lockdown. And so it lacked that audience interaction. But for me, that's so integral that I was trying to find ways of making that happen, even through the lens. So hopefully you'll pick up on that as you're watching it. This piece is set to a piece of music that is what's known as a percussion solo. So it just has drums and other percussion instruments in it, including finger cymbals, so held on the fingers, and I am playing those as well in this piece. So you'll see what they look like. They're called sagat in Arabic or zil in Turkish, and they are a very traditional thing for a dancer to do, to accompany the music with the finger cymbals. But the style in which I'm dancing is much more modern because it's such a tight choreography. This wouldn't be something that you could do with improvised music. So traditionally, the music is improvised, the dance is improvised. I do a lot of that. But obviously, in the modern era, we get to work with recorded music, so we can really like analyze every little moment in the music and find things to go with it. Having said that, I like to always keep some elements of spontaneity in the dance, and so I have some of those here as well.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. Just seem like you're just so much in joy, and then the movements and the finger symbols and all the different undulations.
Yeah, look, that piece was really just about having fun.
Yeah.
That's all that one was. 'Cause the thing about a drum solo or a percussion solo is because it's not a song, it doesn't have any lyrics, it doesn't have any other like melodic instruments, it doesn't have any meaning in the way that a song with words has a meaning and an emotional context. So in that sense, it offers a lot of freedom. And it's just fun. So one of the things that's very characteristic of Oriental dance, I think, is the the contrast between movements that are very sharp and tight, which we often call isolations or accents, and then other movements which are smooth and flowing. So I kind of call those the masculine versus the feminine movements. And I think one of the things I love about it is the contrast between those two. And obviously, a piece of music like that, where all of the sounds in it are percussive sounds, lends itself more to the accented or isolated moves. And so it's really playing with those notes. The Arabic drum, which is known as a darabuka or tabla, can play lots of different sounds when it's done well. So you can get like really tight, high pitched ones and heavy, grounded, earthy bass notes and everything in between, and the fabulous patterns they play. So it's really just the fun of engaging with that music and finding what part of the body wants to respond to that particular sound, and then adding in extra sounds myself. So I get to be the musician. This is why finger cymbals are so fun. I'm like, oh, there isn't any beat in that bit of the music, but I want one, so I get to put one there. Um, and yeah, and then that playfulness as well with the audience. But of course, that's not how I always dance. There are some really serious and emotional and heartfelt pieces too, but that one's just, yeah, just pure fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I could just feel that pure joy. And that's so interesting, Rachel, because as you were elaborating, there's the element of the feminine and also the masculine, which I find interesting components. And you saying you really liking that contrast. And then in this particular performance, there's also that sense of freedom. Like you were saying, you get to be the musician, you get to decide, when you want to have a certain rhythm going in there. And I just love how your personality just oozes out in, different moments.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, as things have gone on in your career with this, you do teaching,
Yeah.
and can you share with us? Because I in your bio, Rachel, you had mentioned that you like working with women who start to kind of go into deeper levels of themselves. Can you share with us what some of your experience have been as a teacher teaching women this form of dance?
One of the things that's so interesting about teaching this form of dance is that we get a lot of women coming to it who have never danced before at all, possibly more so than in other forms of dance. And often people come with an expectation of the dance being a very feminine thing and also being a women's only space. And for sure, this is a dance that's done in the culture by men as well, but I choose to make my classes for women only because a lot of women want and expect that. And it just offers this really safe, nurturing environment. This dance involves parts of the body that a lot of women may experience a lot of shame around. Um, the hips and pelvic area, and also the chest. And those areas, like this, the centers of this dance are the heart and the pelvis, and everything else just extrapolates from there. So getting people to be comfortable with moving, engaging, being aware even of that part of their body can be quite challenging sometimes. Some women launch right into it, but others are super, super shy and scared. And that's totally understandable because, we've all got different backgrounds and different ways of understanding our bodies and having our bodies also spoken about by other people. Um, and I find that it can bring people a lot of freedom. There's a move I'm going to teach you a little later, if we have the chance, called the hip shimmy. And it's a shaking action of the pelvis. And I think it is the most liberating movement imaginable because it invites us to let loose, to relax, to let the wobbly bits wobble, which so often in Western culture we're taught not to do and not to allow ourselves to do. Look, this dance can just be a physical activity, but it can also be really life-changing. I'm a bit wary of saying this, but I have had more than one woman who has decided to make a massive change in her relationship at some point after starting the class. And I can't attribute that entirely to the dance. I can't attribute it entirely to the atmosphere of hanging around a lot of women, but there's one person in particular I'm thinking of who worked in a very male-dominated profession and had never really spent that much time just hanging out with other women, and it made a profound change to her. And there are also people who just express the physical benefits of dance, and that actually probably goes across the board with any kind of dance, and telling me how much more comfortable they feel in their bodies, how much more fit and able they are to do things, even things like improvements in their balance. So yes, you could get that from any form of movement or dance, but this happens to be the one I think is super powerful.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, Rachel, these parts of the body that in Western culture women aren't necessarily moving in these certain ways, even if they're out like on the dance floor and whatnot, but there still seems to be a bit more of restriction in that respect of moving these body parts and kind of like even like celebrating them. So how, yeah. So how important in your view is it for women to get in touch with these, whether they take a class or not, to really kind of connect in with these parts of themselves as a woman? How important is that in your estimation?
I think it's vital for everyone, but I mean, we're going into psychology now more so than dance. Not just for women, it's just that I happen to work with women. The more in touch we are with our bodies, the more at peace we are with our bodies, the healthier we are going to be, physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally. There's a lot of body dysmorphia out there. There's a lot of people who are not comfortable with their body, and it's making them really unhappy. So I think that dance offers an avenue to celebrate what your body can do, and that takes the focus away from what it looks like and shifts it to what it's capable of. And belly dance is also associated strongly with the body positivity movement. So embracing everyone of every size, of every background, of every age, different levels of ability. I have students who attend my classes sitting down the whole time because of maybe injuries or disability that limits what they can do with their lower body, and there's still so much they can do with the upper body. But yeah, I think these parts of the body are something that we need to get in touch with. This is where our vital organs are housed. So in a lot of Western focused dance traditions, dance is more about the extremities. It's about what your arms and legs are doing. And sure, as I mentioned before, this dance uses the entire body, and hopefully you saw that in the video, but I really believe that it emanates from here.
Yeah.
So getting that connection, it's also a heart connection. So, this ties into it being a soulful dance and a dance of communication and sharing with other people. So that's something else that's super valuable, is the connections that women form with one another. Can I mention a little something on that note from my personal experience when I was starting out with dance classes, and when I was in my early 20s, I mean, as a university student, my friends were basically all the same age as me. They were all the other people who were in the same year of their study as me, or maybe I knew someone who was the year above or below. But my world was pretty narrow in that way. And it was only in the dance studio that I was able to develop real friendships with women who were a generation older than me. because we're all there on an equal footing. And I see that happening in my students, and it just delights me. I think it enriches us all so much.
That's a beautiful insight. I'm so glad that you shared that, Rachel, and all the other things that you're sharing. I think this would be a great moment for us to have a little demo of whatever you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Okay. Well, I've promised you a shimmy, so I'll make sure I do that. Just going to take a moment to rearrange for a sec and make sure that you can, I'm going to just adjust the angles so that you can see me. Let's see. Oh, that looks pretty good. Change the angle a little. There we go. All right. I'm a little bit crooked. That's okay. You can see things, right? Fantastic. So the first, oh, sorry, just getting a little bit of space. If you're going to join in, then the first thing that I really recommend is that you find some kind of scarf or sash that you can tie on your hips, because this is a traditional thing. In the Middle East, women will very often be wearing some kind of scarf on their head. And when it comes time to dance, it goes onto the hips. So even if it's just a piece of fabric, or of course, I've got my fancy, beautiful, decorated one. Oh, the light is blowing it out when I bring it a bit closer. So it serves two purposes. It's that cultural purpose, but also it brings attention to the hips. So it helps you connect to that part of the body. I'm just going to put that on. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is just stand and feel your weight on the ground and just bounce a little bit up and down, feeling the feet, the pressure on the floor, allowing the knees to soften and allowing the whole body to soften. And you might even want to just to get out any tension from sitting down. And then, look, I'm going to launch straight into a move that would never normally be the first move I teach, but I think it's one of those characteristic, super important moves in the dance that's really worth learning. So it's going to be our hip shimmy. For this one, all you need to do is stand with your knees not quite straight and your back straightish, and then you're just going to bend one knee and bend the other knee. And as you can see, my feet are staying on the floor. They're not going anywhere. So we're just going to bend one knee and then the other. And as you do that, allow all of this area of the body to soften. We are so accustomed to gripping everything really tightly, squeezing, being told to keep our tummy tight, squeeze your glutes. Look, there are times for that in belly dance, absolutely. There are movements that require that, but right now I want you to relax all of this. Let the inner thighs wobble. Let the belly be soft. Let the bottom be soft. And so when you move through your legs, it pushes the hip bones around, and everything else, all the fleshy bits go blah, 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 in response. And it feels a bit silly, but I encourage you to go blah, 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 a little bit, because it just helps you not take it so seriously and remind you to soften everything. We're going to float our hands out just to a nice, comfortable position here, lengthening the fingertips. And what we're going to do is just gradually start speeding up those hips. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. The other benefit of this scarf is you can hear it making a bit of noise. Do keep breathing. Do keep reminding yourself to soften and press your feet into the earth. And over time and over practice, you'll develop this lovely relaxed motion of the hips, just a wobbling motion of the hips. You can see why it seems really simple, but it's actually quite challenging to do it super well. So that's the Egyptian hip shimmy. Yeah, cool. Well done. Shake it out. But I want to teach you one more move, because this one more move is the number one move. If you were ever invited to like an Arabic or a Turkish party and you want to have one move to do, it's going to be this one. So this is going to be a hip lift. For this one, I'll just take a minute to do this. You can start with your feet under your hips, but then you're going to bring one of them just a little bit forwards. I'll just make sure you can see my feet. One foot a little bit forwards with the heel lifted. And then we're going to bend both knees. Yeah, so both knees are staying bent, and that way we can protect our backs. And from here, I'm simply going to press this foot into the floor, the ball of the foot, and use that to push my hip upwards. So the idea is lift, 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 lift. My weight is mostly sinking into my back leg, so I kind of feel like I'm sinking backwards a little bit. Not actually leaning back, but feeling the weight of the foot, of the body in that back heel as this front hip lifts up. And you can make it look pretty by bringing your arms into this kind of position, perhaps. You'll often see Lebanese women when they do this move, kind of singing along and playing with their hands here. You might turn around. You might change sides. It's a very versatile move, so if you're only going to learn one belly dance move to get you going, for next time you're invited to an Arabic wedding, that is the move to learn.
Rachel, that is awesome.
I don't know where that came from, but I assume that's enough for right now.
Yeah, those are some great moves to just kind of like practice, get the feet wet and get that rhythm going. Yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to show us in the demo?
Well, I can do, for the sake of how we talked before about the contrast between the percussive or sharp moves and the smooth flowy moves. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll just do one more. And you know what? This next one you can do sitting down, because I know some of you will be sitting down. And so we're going to do a smooth move through the upper body and shoulders. So start just by rolling your shoulders backwards. Roll, roll, roll. What makes this a lot easier is if you think of relaxing your face, your neck, your jaw, even your tongue. Let the mouth fall a little open and notice how much easier it is to move everything when you do that. So the other moves we had were centered in the pelvis. This move is actually centered in the heart. So even though we started with the shoulders, I want you to bring it so that you feel that your heart is kind of in the center of this movement, being gently rolled side to side. Okay, once you've got that, we can just float the arms up. They don't need to be very high. Keep them nice and low and comfortable, and do the same move again. And you'll notice that the movement flows outwards through the arms, through the wrists, the elbows and the wrists and the knuckles, and finishes off at the fingertips. So this is what I meant about the dance emanating from the inside, and everything else, our extremities, being more a consequence of the movement in the core. So this is soft and flowy. You can go really slow and swoon. You can go fast. Of course, you can do it standing up as well, but this is just to make a lovely contrast from the shimmy, which was the fast up and down, and the hip lift, which was really snappy. And so now a luscious, flowy movement. There you go. That's a lovely one to do if anyone has a bit too much computer time, a bit too much of this. Just activating those shoulder blades in the back, opening the chest and allowing this whole area to soften is going to do wonders for you.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea, because all of us, well, not all of us, but many of us spend so much time in front of the computer. We can start doing that Rachel flow.
Yeah, give it a go.
I can see why you're an excellent teacher. You're just bringing it all out, the way you kind of like construct the words and just your whole presentation.
Oh, thank you. I'm a very verbal person. As a teacher, it's really important to be aware that there are lots of different learning styles out there. So some people just learn by watching, and all the talking is not necessary or not helpful for them. There are many ways of describing anything, but describing a move, it can be described in terms of thinking of drawing shapes or visualizations, or it can be feeling into the bones and the muscles. But I think because it took me a really long time to learn, like I was not a natural dancer. I have students who've learnt in 4 years what took me 10 years to learn. But I think it's made me a better teacher because it was a struggle. It didn't come naturally for me. I had to think about it.
Well, we certainly would not have thought that. So I appreciate you sharing that, that part of your journey. And I'm sure that will draw a lot of inspiration to others, because your fluidity and just the joy and the freedom and the movement that comes through is just really beautiful watching you, and just, the whole body movements, your facial expressions. I mean, you really can really tap into that beautiful flow, that beautiful energy.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled that you are appreciating it in that way, because really that's kind of part of my mission in life, is for as many people as possible to discover how wonderful and how beautiful this dance really is, and to overcome sometimes some of the stereotypes or misconceptions that might be out there, and just open people's eyes to the beauty of this dance.
Mhm. Rachel, do you think that belly dance, Oriental dance, do you think it's on the rise? Is it been gaining popularity within the last couple of years? What is kind of your overview with what's going on with that, kind of across the board?
That's really hard for me to say, to be honest. It definitely grew massively when Shakira first came on the scene. So um, she certainly wasn't my impetus for learning, but I've spoken to many people and heard many other dancers all around the world say that they first discovered it when Shakira became huge. And so that led to a massive uptake of belly dance around the world. But I mean, this dance is old. It's been around for a long time. It's not going anywhere. It has grown over the past couple of decades all over the world. There's a massive community. Virtually every country that you go to has a substantial belly dance community. So big, in fact, that it's allowed different countries to sort of develop their own offshoot sort of typical styles that correspond in some that blend the Arabic culture with their local culture. So, for instance, some parts of the world are much more competitive than others, and that competitive spirit and that competitive style has created a particular way of dancing. In Australia, we tend to be less competitive and a bit more go with the flow, and I think that has created a different style here. I started my school in 2008, just after the financial crisis, which was a crazy time to start a business, but it worked and it's grown over that time. And every single year, I have women who call me and say, I've always wanted to do belly dancing, but for whatever reason, I've never had the time, or I've just never got around to it. And for some reason, right now I have. So I can't say whether it's grown overall, but I can say that my community here in Sydney has definitely grown
Mhm.
and continues to grow. Yeah.
We have time to look at a few performance photos. So why don't I pull some up? Now there's some where you have a stick, and I would love for you to explain that. Let me go ahead and pull one up and have you share with us, Rachel, what's going on.
Yeah, okay. Oh, I love this photo. It captures such a fabulous moment. Um, Part of what's fabulous about it is, as you can see, there's a band, and dancing to live music is just the best. It's an unparalleled experience. But in terms of the style that I'm dancing here, including my outfit, there are many parts of the world actually where a stick or cane of some kind is a traditional part of everyday life. This dance in particular is coming from Upper Egypt, which is actually the south of Egypt, an area called the Said, where those quite chunky sticks are something that traditional men would carry around the whole time. Obviously, less so in the modern day, but when I was last there, there was a big traditional festival on, and the men were out in force with their sticks, which is known as asaya in Arabic. And it's just a part of their life. They carry it with them everywhere, the same way that many Australian or American women carry a handbag or a purse everywhere with them where they go, right? It's part of you. And anything that's part of you is also going to be incorporated into the dance. It's used in a number of ways in the dance. It can be used just for fun, like, putting it up in the air going, yeah, yeah, yeah. But also in more specific ways, it can be twirled, it can be hit. It can also be used as a reference to fighting. So it can be a way for men to show off their strength and their control. There's actually a southern Egyptian martial art form called Tatib, which involves two men with sticks doing a fight with martial arts kind of structures. It's not really a dance, but the movements from that art of Tatib are adopted and taken into the dance to inform the dance. So what I'm doing here is a female take on what's actually traditionally more of a men's style dance. So that you can probably see from that photo that I've just made a great big leap forwards. So obviously it's not a feminine thing to do, to be leaping and to, you know, have feet right off the ground like that. My costume is also a bit of a mashup. So I've got the dress, or which in Arabic is called a galabeya. Both women and men in traditional cultures in Egypt, in traditional communities, wear a galabeya, which is a full-length kind of cloak or dress. Obviously, the men's and the women's ones look a bit different, but everyone does wear them. You know, long sleeves, quite covered. Having splits in the side like that is a nod to a bit more of a modern take, but then I've also got pants on underneath so that, yeah, because it's not about showing skin. And I'm even wearing shoes because there's a lot of jumping in that dance. So yeah, there's a few cool things going on in that.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's take a look at one more. All right.
Okay. So this is an action shot from a wedding that I performed at. You can see the bride and groom behind me, and you can also see a guy with a big drum. This is my dear friend Jamal, who's a fabulous dancer based here in Sydney. I've worked with him for many a year. But the key thing is what you see on top of my head, which is a candelabra known as a shamadan in Arabic. And one of the ways that the shamadan has traditionally been used in dance is in a wedding context and to symbolize lighting a new path for the newlywed couple, which is just some beautiful symbolism, really. Yeah, so there are some amazing traditional dancers that do incredible things with that on their head, including floor work and going down into the splits and things like that. I'll just to let you know, I didn't do that in this performance. This was more just a walk in. And in fact, sometimes as dancers, we get employed just to do a walk in at a wedding. So we don't ever do a dance show as such. It's just have the dancer lead the bride and groom into the wedding reception. That's a really popular thing in Lebanese and Egyptian communities too. It's hard, it's heavy. You got to be super controlled. You got to work on all of those isolation skills that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's amazing. Those were some great performance photos of you, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks.
And the symbolism is beautiful too. Particularly, you know, with the wedding too, to light this whole new path and kind of that whole celebration theme as well.
It's so celebratory, yeah. I mean, most of this dance is about that. It's possible to dance to slow songs and things, but I hardly ever do. You know, I would do that in a concert that's just by dancers for dancers, but normally when I'm performing, my role is to bring joy. And so, yeah, it's all about the happiness and the celebration.
And that really are synonyms, wouldn't you say, for dance? I mean, we're specifically speaking about Oriental belly dance, but all dance in general, wouldn't you say that has to do with joy and a sense of freedom and celebration?
Well, many cultural dances do. I'm certainly not going to speak for all of them because I believe that there are also cultural dances that come out of repression as well. So I'd be hesitant to say all dances, but certainly many. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Is there anything, Rachel, that we haven't touched upon as we're getting ready to close about your journey, about this dance that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, look, there are a million things, but I just want to, I guess, mention one point, which is that this dance is not a movement vocabulary. I mean, it is, but that's only one small component of it. The fact that it comes from a place, from a people, from a culture, well, actually several places and peoples and cultures, is super, super important. And it's based on the music of those people, it's based on all of the aspects of those cultures. And I think it's super important, especially for me as a white woman living in Australia, to really honor those cultural origins. And that's something that I aim to do in my performances, and that I aim to inform my students about as best I can as well. Because I'm not here to be appropriating someone else's culture. I'm here to be celebrating it, to be sharing it, to be the best ambassador for it that I can be. And I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to learn so much about another culture and to appreciate some of the, you know, the wonderful things it has to offer.
Rachel, this has been such an amazing journey into your life as a dancer, and how that's evolved and unfolded for you, and all the different education that you've also taught us as well, and your beautiful demo and performances. Let us know how we can stay connected with you. And we always like to offer our guests closing comments, or however you'd like to close out the show, and how we can connect with you as well, please.
Okay, well, my school is called Inspire Bellydance. We are based in Sydney, Australia, but of course, in the modern era, we teach online as well. So if anybody's interested in learning, feel free to get in touch. You can Google Inspire Bellydance. We also have a presence on Facebook and on Instagram as Inspire Bellydance. I personally just go under Rachel. Belly dancer Rachel, but it's usually easier to find me through Inspire Belly Dance, because there's a lot of Rachels out there in the world who do belly dance. I also would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Eora people, who were the traditional owners of the land in the Sydney area where I now live. And to me, that's just as important as acknowledging the origins of the dance in Arabic culture. And it makes me a little emotional every time I say that.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for being our guest today, and just sharing so much with us of this beautiful art form, this beautiful dance form, and your love and your passion and dedication with it is really beautiful.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be your guest and to, you know, to spread the word.
Yeah,
Thanks for
yeah.
your insightful questions as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. All right, so continued success. Stay connected with us and let us know of new developments that come your way. And we'll be posting all the links. So anyone who's interested, who is not in the Sydney area, that would like to virtually take one of your classes, we'll have the opportunity in the video description to sign up with you and join in this whole beautiful dance of joy and freedom and movement. And as we said, we'll kind of go back to the beginning, kind of go full circle here, connecting in with yourself and connecting in with others.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching today. We appreciate the time you take to watch our artist videos. Please stay connected with us on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. And we'll talk soon on the next Art and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.